If you're going to judge the men and women of CSIS, do so as you would interpret how you, yourself, or your family or neighbors would respond to a situation. We would respond pretty much the same way. And don't make those judgments based on what you see on the internet or a Hollywood movie. My name is Alan Jones. I was a career intelligence officer in Canadian Security Intelligence Service for 28 years after 4 years of being in the RCMP. Started as a field intelligence officer and eventually retired as an assistant director, and in the interim was Director General of the Counterterrorism Program, the International Terrorism Program, the Senior Policy Advisor at the Privy Council Office, Security Intelligence Secretariat, was Assistant Director of Operations, which is the Chief Operating Officer for CSIS, in charge of all operational activity. In the late 1970s, I was at Carleton University, and in our classrooms, I was 18, 19 years old, and our classrooms were these middle-aged fellows, well, middle-aged to us, they were probably in their 30s, wearing very short haircuts, polyester pants, and definitely were not students like the rest of us. And in conversation with them, began to realize that they were in the RCMP. Ultimately, I found that they were in the security service. And one of them said to me at one point, "What do you want to do when you graduate from university?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to be a spy of sorts, but I have no idea how you do that in Canada." And Don had said to me, "Well, why don't you join the RCMP and you can get into the security service, which does that type of work." The conversation was a little longer than that and involved several beers, but that was the gist of it. And the rules at the time was you had to spend 5 years in the RCMP writ large doing criminal work while you waited to be accepted, reviewed, looked at, and accepted into security service. At the 4-year mark of being in the RCMP, CSIS was created, security service was separated from the RCMP, so I had a decision to make as either stay in the RCMP, where I had a very good career, work with great people, or leave and join CSIS, which is what I did.
How did your friends and family react?
Well, my wife and I had been married a year and had just bought a house, so her concern was, are you going to have a job and be able to help pay the mortgage? My father, who was in the military, thought perhaps I was losing my mind of giving up a solid job with the RCMP to join an organization that had been created which nobody knew anything about, and no one was entirely sure was going to exist in a year from then.
What did you tell them?
Well, I told them that I had joined the RCMP in the first place to get into security service, that is really what I was interested in. Not that I disliked doing the criminal work that I was doing, it was good work, but that if I didn't make that decision to try and join CSIS, I would forever wonder if I had made the right or the wrong decision of not going. And I thought, well, if I go and it doesn't work out, I'll find something else to do.
Why did you want to be a spy so much?
Well, I use the term spy somewhat glibly and colloquially. What I was interested in was intelligence work. And my interest in intelligence work, I think, this is an introspective kind of a question, is I have always been very curious about how things work. As a kid, whenever I got a toy or something electric, I took it apart to see what was going on inside of it. And my interest in global affairs and international affairs was always with me. I was always reading the newspaper. I was a newspaper boy, delivered the newspaper for years. So I read the front page of the newspaper while I walked around during the years of the Vietnam War, of the Cold War. So I was always up to date on current events. And I was very interested as to how that was working. And intelligence seemed to be a way to get on the inside track of what made things tick internationally, what made groups and countries have the decision-making process they did. And I thought the interesting part was the human beings involved in it.
What were the early days in the service like?
They were rough. My father's first instincts were probably right about what it was like to join a new organization. The service is underpinned by the CSIS Act, which is a brilliantly written document which has endured over decades, but it did not come with a user manual. There were no instructions on how you created a civilian service, intelligence service, and specifically a security service in Canada. And so you suddenly have this separate organization, and then you realized what you had lost living inside that big organism of the RCMP. And you had a lot of people doing things which had nothing to do with intelligence work, trying to keep the heat and lights going, trying to get paychecks flowing, simple things like that. On the operational side, there was not a clear understanding between the government of Canada and the leadership, and certainly the men and women working at CSIS, as to really what the government of Canada expected you to do on a daily basis. There was the big idea, the big principle approach, but how you did it in practice, other than being told, don't do what policemen did, don't take notes, don't keep tape recordings any more than you need to, don't do a whole bunch of things, you don't arrest people. There was a whole list of don'ts. There was no list of do's. And time was not on our side or another side when 11 months later we had Air India. And that was when it became very, very clear that this understanding as to how CSIS was to operate on a daily basis needed a lot of work, tragically.
How do you build an intelligence service?
That is a great question. I think, first of all, like all organizations, you start with people. When I first joined in those early days, I was interviewed by a senior officer at the CSIS office in Vancouver. And he was quite forthright and said, look, this is a new organization. There's a lot that is not finished. There's a lot that has to be done. Some people find that quite unsettling. Some people don't like it at all. And my response to him was, I've gathered that. And my perspective is that my career will probably be more about building an intelligence service than it will be doing the James Bond stuff that I'd kind of hoped to do. Maybe the generations after me will be able to do a lot more of that type of work. But in the meantime, we have to build every aspect of an intelligence service, and we have to learn what that is. And so those of us who stayed, and many left, many people just said, this place is chaotic, this is no fun, this is not what I thought it would be, and others stayed. I think what we ultimately did was accept the proposition of the MacDonald Commission and the CSIS Act that Canada needed a civilian intelligence service, a civilian security service to be specific, and that the people of Canada and the way the world was unfolding meant that we had to do that, and it was needed, and we would do it. It was a mission.
What's the most difficult situation you ever faced as an intelligence officer?
The difficult parts of the service were at the beginning and trying to get it stood up and running with support and capable. The other part came in the mid-2000s after 9/11, where it became apparent that the service did not have the capacity to keep up with the level of threats that were developing, that were emanating from Afghanistan, that were emanating from Europe and the Middle East, that were emanating from within Canada, from radicalized individuals in Canada, and from an absolutely fire hose level of data and information being poured at us from all points of the compass that we were trying to digest, understand, and make sense of. And the scale of information and data in a digital world, which was growing, smartphones had just been invented, was overwhelming all of us. And our staff were burning out, they were tired, they were worn out, they couldn't keep up, and our methodology and our technology wasn't where we needed to be. The long story short, there was an application made to government for increasing the service's resources to get up to the level where we needed to be. It's called integrity funding because you're worried about the integrity of your mandate if you can't have enough capacity to deal with the workload. And what we received was the money that we needed, but it almost doubled the budget and almost doubled the size of the service. That happened at the same time as we had a demographic of people retiring. At the time of the MacDonald Commission, it was essentially a a stopping of staffing into the security service. They weren't hiring anyone new because the government hadn't decided what the security service was going to look like in future, or whether it'd be a new intelligence service. That flat line lasted about 5 years, 6, 7 years, something like that, until CSIS was created and hiring started. So what you had were, when I joined and I was about 25, the nearest person to me in age was about 34. Almost a 9 years service. There was probably some younger ones around somewhere, I didn't know them, but that's in my offices, that's what the difference was. You move that forward, 35 years to the mid-2000s, all those people are retiring all at once. So you had all your experience, senior experience, walking out the door at the same time. We were hiring a massive number of new IOs and new admin and new technologists and new everybody. And we did not have as I had said to the director at the time, we don't have the capacity to increase our capacity. We're running out of people not only to handle the files, the investigations, we don't have the people to do the training, to do the mentoring, and that meant that not only did they not have the operational experience, they didn't have the experience of managing human beings. We had very junior people who weren't able to, just didn't have the life experience to deal with some of those things, and we didn't have the operational experience. So that put a level of stress on the service, which was actually one of the highest levels of stress I think the organization had, was to digest that money, bring those people, get them trained, get them online, and do it without having the wheels come off somewhere.
What's something you wish more Canadians knew or understood about the service?
I would like Canadians to understand that the men and women at CSIS come from the same streets, the same towns, the same villages and cities, go to the same schools and universities that they do, that we all grew up with the same principles and values as every other Canadian, have the same objectives of Canadian, the same desire for the future of Canada as other Canadians. We just chose to serve our country, working for an intelligence service to protect Canada, Canadian from threats to security of Canada. And if you're going to judge the men and women of CSIS, do so as you would interpret how you yourself or your family or neighbors would respond to a situation. We would respond pretty much the same way. And don't make those judgments based on what you see on the internet or a Hollywood movie. We're just Canadians doing this job. It's a tough job.